Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Legal Access. Today we're going to be talking about personal injury. That is our topic here today. If you have any personal injury questions, if you've been hurt in any respect, make sure and give us a call. We'll answer those questions for you here today on Legal Access. The phone number is 843-848-8080. It's on your screen, so please give us a call. Personal injury, that's our topic here today. And here on the panel to answer those questions for you from the McGuire Law Firm is Tiffany Bufkin. And Tiffany, in addition to personal injury, what does the McGuire Law Firm handle?
Yeah, so we do workers' comp and all kinds of personal injury
Okay.
cases. So motor vehicle accidents, wrongful death, any type of personal injury claim we'll take, and then we also handle workers' comp.
And to your left, we have Joe Sandifer here with us as well. And Joe, what firm are you with, and what all else do you handle?
I'm with Morgan & Morgan. We handle PI cases, premises liability cases, trucking cases, med mal cases, a pretty good amount, anything PI related,
Right.
pretty much.
So we're well equipped to answer all of your questions. If you've been injured on somebody else's property, maybe in a car accident, something like that, give us a call today. We'll let you know what your next steps should be and the pitfalls that you should avoid to make sure that your case moves forward and you have a positive outcome. So again, the phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Don't be shy, give us a call. We'll get you on the air and answer your questions here today about personal injury. Now, the most common personal injury case that I'm sure that your firms handle, automobile accidents. So what are some of the pitfalls that you see that somebody might have as far as a car accident is concerned that might hamper their case a little bit?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I run into more often than I expected is people who are injured in a car accident come into a settlement with the insurance carrier prematurely, right? So in South Carolina, and it's different than other states like Florida, New York, where those are no-fault states and your insurance will pay as you treat. South Carolina is different in that the injured person will get treatment on their own, and then you come to a settlement. So if you come to a settlement prematurely, that is something that kind of happens a lot. So I always encourage people, if you're injured in a car accident, to consult with an attorney.
Yeah, 100%. And then there's one carrier in particular that likes to jump on the phone with you immediately after a car crash and offer you a small sum of money for you to sign some documents. In that situation, if you call one of us, we're going to talk to you about the case. We don't charge anything. And if they're giving you a good deal, we'll talk to you about that. But once you sign that document, that's it.
The insurance carriers are very skilled in what they do, and they want to make sure that they offer you the lowest amount and then try to pressure you into signing on that immediately or as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fighting against those people, I'm sure, are very fun.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I do too.
I like doing that.
Yep.
But one thing that I'll say too, kind of just to piggyback on what Joe said, whenever people call our firm, we do free consultations, so you don't owe anything to either of our firms whenever you call. And if someone has been injured in a car accident and they already have an offer, if we take the case, we're not going to charge a fee on the offer that they have in writing from the insurance carrier anyways. So really there's no prejudice in calling and speaking to an attorney. But usually the more pressure that the insurance agent is putting on somebody to accept a settlement, there's usually a reason behind that.
Yep.
Now, how do you guys calculate, or how do the insurance companies calculate how much money some accident is worth, or how much the settlement should be?
I think they have a computer system that they plug in a bunch of numbers and it spits out some offer that is, a very specific number with, 37 cents attached to the end of it. So I think it's very formulaic of the way that they're doing it. I think they've invested a ton of money in assigning numbers to certain types of injuries.
I think especially in pre-litigation too, and I have a lot of clients who their first question is, how long is this going to take?
Right.
And it's so hard for us because the answer really depends on who is the insurance carrier, what type of injuries did you have, but a lot of times the insurance adjusters before you file a lawsuit in the pre-lit, I really feel like they're just typing in, this is the medical bills, this is, these are the injuries, and then there's like a calculation, some formula that pops up. I think that once you file a lawsuit and you're going through the litigation process, most of the time the case is transferred to an adjuster who's more savvy with
Right.
the litigation process. And at that point, the adjusters are, generally they're looking at what is the average jury verdict in this county.
Right.
But a lot of times you really just have to litigate cases in order to make your claim kind of stand out and not just be, a medical
Right.
expense on a piece of paper that's coming across some insurance adjuster's desk.
Now, obviously, individuals can, go to the insurance companies themselves. It's not advisable that they do that, but if they do that, there's going to be a lot of things that they miss out on, like maybe pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, things like that, that you guys, as attorneys, know to roll into the final settlement.
Right, and even dealing with medical liens. There's a negotiation. Part of our negotiations that we do is not just getting what you're owed and what's due to you from the insurance company, but also what those medical bills that you've been billed, working those down for you. So we try to get as much from here, but also work this down as much as we can.
Also, something that the layperson might not think about is like if they sign off on a settlement, then if they have to have back surgery 3 years from now, that can be traced back to the accident that they had today. They might be out of luck if they don't try to figure that into the final settlement.
Yeah, and sometimes that's not possible, right, to figure that into a settlement. It really depends on how much the policy limits are. If there's only a $25,000 policy and you get the full amount of the policy, there's, you have some limitations on future meds, but it's so important to not prematurely settle and to make sure that you're fully compensated for the injuries that you've sustained, including future medical treatment for sure.
If somebody comes to you and they've been hurt, let's just say in a car accident or on somebody else's property, and they come to you and say, yeah, I've got these medical bills that are piling up, but I don't want to sue somebody because I'm not that kind of a person. I hate all I'm not a litigious person, and you see all these lawsuits all over the place, and I don't want to be one of those kind of people. What do you tell them in that situation?
I say that I have every one of my clients just about has never been in that situation before, and they've never sued anybody. And I tell them, look, it's not your fault that you've been put in this situation. And listen, that's what insurance is for. You pay money for insurance. Most likely the other person has paid money for insurance. And
Absolutely.
we're not digging in anybody's personal pocket.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from personal experience, I actually was in a car accident 2 years ago with my sister in the passenger seat, and it was my fault. And she injured her ankle, and she was very hesitant because she's like, I don't want your insurance. I'm like, my insurance is going to go up anyways because I was in a car accident. That was my fault. There's no reason for her to be left holding on to medical bills and everything. I'm like, please sue me. I will not take offense to it. So I think that, you have insurance for a reason, and that's something that, sometimes it's uncomfortable if you know the other person.
Sure.
But those are, situations that you can kind of talk through and work through.
And also, if you're riding along with Tiffany, just make sure and wear your seatbelt. That's all I'm saying. Tell you what, we're going to run to a break here real quick. When we get back, we would love to take your phone calls. If you have any questions about automobile accidents, maybe premises liability, if you've slipped and fallen on somebody else's property, if you have any medical malpractice questions, we can answer all that stuff here today. Personal injury is what we're talking about here today. Get your calls in right here on Legal Access. Welcome back to Legal Access. Our topic today is personal injury. If you've been hurt in a car accident, maybe you've been hurt on the job, maybe you've been hurt on somebody else's property, whatever the case may be, give us a call and we'll answer those questions for you here today. Our phone number is on your screen. It's 848-8080. Along with Tiffany Buffkin and Joe Sandifer, I'm Dave Priest. Give us a call. We'll get you on the air. Let's go to North Myrtle Beach. We have somebody who's been holding through the break very patiently. Hi, thanks for calling in. What's your question for the panel today?
My question is, if you slip and fall at a hospital and sue them, can they refuse treatment in the future for you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Tiffany, I mean, I'd have to look into it, a little bit more in depth, but that kind of gets into what the what legal responsibilities the hospital has to treat people that come in.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be something that we'd have to take a little bit of a look at to make sure. But it is complicated when you get injured at the place that's supposed to provide you treatment and health treatment. So definitely something that I would give a call to a lawyer and ask about.
Yeah, because I think it's going to depend as well whether it's like federal,
Right.
whether it's a state hospital, private hospital, and what type of treatment. Like if it's emergency
Yeah.
treatment versus some type of optional treatment that maybe
Yeah,
they
getting
could direct you
blacklisted from a
elsewhere.
hospital sounds a little extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate that. If you have any questions about personal injury, today is the day to get those questions answered. The phone number is on your screen. Don't hesitate, give us a call. Before we went to break, Tiffany, you were talking about, you were in an accident and your passenger needed to bring a suit against your insurance company.
Yes.
A lot of people, if they get into an accident, they might be hesitant to say, I don't want to have my insurance bothered with this. Let's just go after the other guy who was responsible for the wreck. That's great, but that brings up the whole liability limits that you touched on just a minute ago, because in South Carolina, all you have to have is $25,000. And if you go to the hospital once, maybe stay the night, you've already eaten up that $25,000. So you do have to go back against your own insurance a lot of times, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and so that goes into underinsured motorists, and I tell everybody, please go purchase a large underinsured motorist policy. Underinsured motorist is not, I think before I started doing personal injury, I did not realize how important it was because my car wasn't that expensive. So, I was thinking about it in terms of like, if I get into an accident and the property damage, underinsured motorist really is not as expensive as other coverages like collision and optional coverages. But underinsured motorist is so important because I would say probably a majority of people only have minimum limits policies of $25,000. So if you get into a car accident, and your damages exceed $25,000, you kind of are left with either accepting the $25,000 policy limit or trying to go after personal assets, which is, it's going to take a long time to litigate a case against somebody individually, and then most people don't have assets that you can attach to. So, it's very important to have underinsured motorists so that you can be fully compensated in a situation if you're severely injured and the other person only has a $25,000 policy.
Now, Joe, you mentioned a medical malpractice back in the beginning of the show, and I know a lot of people might call your firm and say, hey, my loved one died and I think it was the hospital's fault. What's kind of the bar before you really think that a medical malpractice suit is viable?
Well, first of all, they say it's medical practice, not perfection, right? So just because there is a poor result or something doesn't go as planned does not mean that there's medical malpractice. For a viable medical malpractice case, unfortunately, the damages or the injury has to be catastrophic, because before you can even get out the door with making a claim, you have to consult with a physician who practices in that particular area, and they have to sign off and say that they believe that there is malpractice. So it's much more difficult as opposed to doing a premises case or an auto case. The theories behind it are similar, but it's much more expensive, much more time consuming, and it's much more complex.
Yeah.
And you have to bring in the question of gross negligence as well. And just because your loved one may have died or suffered an injury at a hospital or a doctor's office doesn't mean that the doctor or hospital did anything that was negligent. You might think to a lay person that what they did might be negligent, but from a legal standpoint, it might not get up to that bar.
Yeah, I think that especially in the medical malpractice, I mean, there are so many potential side effects and risk whenever you're going into any type of treatment or procedure. That's really the question: is this something that was caused by negligence?
Right. Mm-hmm. And speaking of negligence, let's go ahead and talk about premises liability for just 1 second. That's a fancy word for if you get injured on somebody else's premises, whether or not they're liable for a case. Now, just because somebody slips and falls, that's the most common picture that somebody gets in their mind. If somebody's at a business and they slip and fall, everybody thinks, oh, I got a case immediately. That's not always the case.
No, and the case law is very specific. The landowner is not the insurer of their guest safety. So really the question comes down to what caused your injury and whether there was some sort of negligence. Premise liability cases, there are a lot more defenses that come up that you don't see in like most car accident cases where somebody, runs into the back of the injured person. So there's always questions as to, was there a dangerous condition? And if there was, who created it? How long had the dangerous condition been there? Did the premise owner have notice of the condition? And did they fail to correct it? So there's a lot more. It's very fact specific, but just because somebody is injured on the premise of another does not mean that they have a viable.
Right.
So with any type of premise liability injury where you're injured at somebody else's establishment, whether it's somebody's home, restaurant, grocery store, hospital. I always encourage people, if you've sustained injuries, call and talk to an attorney because it's a very fact-specific inquiry as to whether you have a viable negligence claim.
And Joe, even if you don't have a claim against maybe the place where you slipped and fell or you injured yourself, a lot of times they might be able to take care of your medical bills.
At least a little bit. A lot of commercial policies have a med pay provision in there that's sort of a no fault. If there's an injury claim, we'll write you a check for either $1,000, $5,000, or maybe $10,000 towards your medical care.
Now, as far as like we were talking about automobile accidents at the beginning of the show, if somebody was involved in like a DUI, if you've been hit by somebody who's been charged with drinking and driving or has been convicted of DUI, how does that affect the case?
Yeah, so if there is any aspect of egregious behavior, you can claim punitive damages.
Right.
So if someone's drinking and driving and they injure you, then in addition to the regular actual damages that you can claim, such as medical bills, pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, you can also bring a claim for punitive damages, which is not intended to make the injured person whole, but rather to kind of punish the wrongdoing in the case. That plays a huge important aspect with car insurance, because punitive damages can be paid out of a property damage policy. So in situations where the bodily injury liability policy might not be sufficient to satisfy the damages, if you get an award for punitive damages, those can be paid from property damage, which usually opens up more money from the insurance carrier.
We're going to run to a break here real quick. When we get back, we still got about 10 minutes left in the show. We'd love to be able to get you on if you have any personal injury questions. Today is the day to get those questions answered. So give us a call. The number's on your screen. We'll get those questions answered for you right when we get back from this break, right here on Legal Access. Oh, I guess we're on the air. Sorry about that. I did not hear the prompt, so hopefully we didn't say anything bad. But we do have about 10 minutes left in the show. If you'd like to give us a call, we're talking about personal injury here today. Phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Whatever you have a question about, whether it's automobile accidents, if you've been hurt on the job, if you have any premises liability questions, or if you have any medical malpractice questions, we're well equipped to answer those questions for you here today. From the McGuire Law Firm, Tiffany Buffkin is here, and also from Morgan & Morgan, Joe Sandifer. Give us a call, 848-8080, and we'll get you on the air. As far as being hurt on the job, workers' compensation kind of seems like it's cut and dry, but it's not always very cut and dried as far as if you've been hurt at work.
Yeah, so most of the time I think that whether or not it's a workers' compensation claim is pretty obvious. There's obviously situations like if you're in a car accident, then there's going to be a question that comes up in most cases as to whether you were in the course and scope of employment whenever the accident occurred. And that really is going to depend on, most of the time, if you're coming to work or going home from work, you're outside the scope of employment. But there are exceptions. If you're driving a company vehicle, if you're running an errand, if you're getting paid for mileage or your time while you're driving, and you are in a car accident, then you can have two claims. So you would have a workers' compensation claim since you were injured on the job, and then also a traditional negligence claim against the other driver if the other driver was at fault. And the good thing about workers' comp is it's a no-fault system, so even if the injured person was at fault, then you could still have a viable workers' comp claim, even if there's not a claim for negligence against another driver.
We were talking about premises liability if you've been injured on somebody else's premises. Is a manager or owner of that business, whoever is on the job there that day when you've hurt yourself, are they required to do anything specific, I mean, to try to help you out as an injured party?
Well, I mean, they should at least come and check on you to make sure you're okay or assist with getting medical attention. A lot of what the manager may need to do on site depends a lot on what do their corporate policies say, and especially when it comes to their investigation of what the incident is. Are they supposed to pull the video? Are they supposed to take pictures? Are they supposed to get statements? And a lot of that is just kind of evidence preservation, which goes back to if you are hurt on somebody's property, especially a corporate property, to contact an attorney at least to discuss it, because if there is a claim, it's important that we get our letters out to preserve that evidence, because videotape will disappear very quickly if we don't put them on notice.
You talked about pictures. I mean, back in the old days, if you whipped out a camera, if you fell somewhere, people would say, oh, he's just trying to make a quick buck by slipping and falling and suing the insurance company. But these days, pretty much everybody expects you to take pictures of everything.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's actually the opposite now, where, you know, whenever I'm talking to insurance adjusters, they kind of assume that the person is going to take photos, and if there's not any photos, they try to kind of use that, especially if it's an accident that was not witnessed, or, you know, the condition wasn't preserved, like if you're outside and maybe there's not, you know, a store clerk to come and make an incident report and stuff, but sometimes that actually is used against the person.
Right.
So I don't think that in most scenarios, now obviously, you know, if you're in a position where you need medical attention immediately, then that makes sense. But in most scenarios, I don't think, like if you're taken out to document what caused your injury, I don't think that is going to be, is going to prejudice the person in most situations now. Because we're just living in a world where, you know, social media is popular, and I think people use their phones to kind of document everything.
Now, as far as being hurt, does it matter like where you're hurt? I mean, let me ask a question. Like if for example, if somebody gets injured and it's somebody else's fault and they're a concert pianist and they hurt their hands, I mean, is that injury going to be worth more to the pianist than somebody like me who, you know, don't have any specific talent?
It very well could be. The point of your compensatory damages is not to punish the at-fault person, it's to make you whole. If you make your living as a concert pianist, or if you make it as a plumber or a construction worker, and you lose the ability to use one or both of your hands, that's going to have a much bigger economic impact on you as it would maybe to me, who I maybe type or send emails out, but I'm not as reliant upon that. So it absolutely could make a big difference depending on what line of work that person is in.
Yeah, and I think in addition to any type of economic harms, you know, one of the things if we're talking about like premise liability cases and negligence, one of the damages is pain and suffering. And if that's what you're passionate about, that's what your hobby is and your outlet is, then it definitely has an effect on pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of life as well.
So the moral of the story, if you're a concert pianist, be very careful no matter where you go, just in case.
Protect your hands.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Tell you what, that's all the time we have for our show here today. We appreciate you watching. Next week, when we get together, we're going to spend a whole 30 minutes on premise liability. That's going to be the show next week. So if we whet your appetite for it this week, hold on to your questions and get to us next Thursday. We'll answer those questions for you. Premises liability next week. For Tiffany Buffkin and Joe Sandifer, I'm Dave Priest. We'll see you again next week, or you can give us a call here, 848-8080, or email us legalaccess@WNBFnews.com. See you again next week for the next edition of Legal Access right here on WNBF News.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your attorney. The nature of any legal issue may depend on a multitude of factors. Therefore, the information provided in this program is purposefully broad and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact and retain an attorney in order to obtain case-specific legal advice.